You're listening to Finding Joy in Education, the podcast that focuses on what brings us joy in the field of education. Each show, you'll hear joy stories from teachers of the year, educators from all walks of life, and leaders, as well as hear hacks to enhance the teaching and learning in our classrooms. This is Finding Joy in Education. Hello, and welcome to the Finding Joy in Education podcast. I'm your host, Sarah Painter, and joining me in the studio today, we have some very, very special guests. First, we have Robin Ford, Senior Professional Development Coordinator here for Pinellas County Schools. She's kind of hitching in on this podcast. We just wrapped up an episode on aha moments where we talked about the exact same topic. So we are piggybacking on that today and continuing in this segment. I also have Miss Becca Gross-Teeter. Becca is the Director of Public Policy for the Juvenile Welfare Board. So Becca, thank you for joining us and being here in the studio today. And then I have Ms. Rizel Turner. She is a parent of some Pinellas County students as well as a good friend of mine and just somebody that I've grown close to over the last few years and has really helped me find joy in my classroom. And just all around great human being and just someone who encourages me and continues to help me find joy. So ladies, welcome to the podcast. So, before we get started, I always ask my guests to tell me their story. I want to hear what brought you to this table today, where you've been and where you are right now. So Becca, what's your story?
Okay. In brief, out of respect for viewers and listeners' time, I am, fun fact, a native Floridian, a native to Pinellas County,
wow,
a graduate of the district.
Oh my gosh.
A Belcher Bob.
Yeah, woohoo!
Also Oak Grove and Pinellas Park High School. Went on to the University of West Florida because one of my teachers encouraged me to attend their alma mater. Started my own company, ran that for the better part of 2 decades, working in higher education and the military on policy reforms, advocacy. Fused that on my journey with politics because just like sometimes people are like, how can y'all do education?
Yep. Mm-hmm. Yep.
That's what they say to me. How can you do politics? And I go, because life's a team sport and let's fix it. And now at the Juvenile Welfare Board, I get to fuse the two. I get to do advocacy and strengthening community. And it is not lost on me that there are times that it would have been very easy. I was not an easy child. Mm-hmm. And educators always stood in the doorway and challenged me to do and be more. And now I get to do that on behalf of the kids and families of Pinellas County. So
I love that.
It's excellent. A pretty awesome gig. And so I'm honored to be here. Thank you.
I'm so glad you're here. I cannot wait to pick your brain and hear some of your insights on what we're talking about today. Rizel, what's your story?
Okay. So I was married very young, 19. I had my first kid at 19. And then fast forward into 2009, we decided as a family to move to the Philippines. That's actually where Maya was born. Mm-hmm. She was in 5th grade class. And when we moved back to Washington State, we moved back to Washington State back in 2010. Mm-hmm. And we were low income. It was really hard having one income that was seasonal. And then I just decided I really want to go to school to become a nurse, but I don't know if I'm smart enough. But then I just started feeling better about myself, working out, and I started to get confidence. So I applied for school. And at the time, having 3 children going in a prerequisite to nursing, it was like, okay, I don't know if I can do this, but mentorship is so important. Absolutely. Like the pathway for mentorship, I had a lady who was pretty much paving the way for me, finding resources for me and my family, childcare, rent vouchers. Like, it was very hard. But I looked at my kids every time and I said they deserve a life, a strong foundation for them to have a fulfilling life.
Yes.
And then back in 2000 and 18, we moved to Florida. We have nobody here, no family, no nothing. It was like, we're moving here out of faith. And then COVID hit, and just their dad had to stay home with them. I was the only one bringing in income. It was very hard, very stressful. And then so all my kids, just very different personalities.
Yes.
But Maya's the one that was directly, in your classroom in 8th grade. And I remember the first picture you ever sent me was you and Maya. And a goofball. I loved her. And then from there, it just kind of rolled into this relationship. And I said, I've never had a teacher who actually went above and beyond and made it feel like a family. And it was in those moments I saw this blossoming of Maya.
Yes.
And it's like, this is beautiful. And it's right before they enter into middle school. So this flourishing was happening with her. And just over time, I've seen it trickle into just the relationship she has with her siblings. And then she'll say, my friend, this friend. I said, who is that? Like, has so many amazing friends, good influences.
Yes.
And as far as school, she's very focused. She is very artistic. And right now, she, grade-wise, she has to keep her grades up for flag football. So she's
a great motivator.
She's very focused on that. And I really feel like, had it not been for the way that you bring joy into your students' lives, that I don't think she would have flourished to the kid she is now, because it truly made a difference. Like, it truly made a difference. So
I love it. I love you guys. I love that was my last year in the classroom, and that happened to be the year I was recognized for Teacher of the Year. So I was gone a lot. But to hear, looking back, I think I could have done so much more. So what you're saying fills my bucket that it was enough. So I appreciate that. So we're going to talk about joy today, and you're going to hear that kind of woven throughout all of my questions and your responses today. So recently, our school superintendent, Kevin Hendrick, he proposed this question to some leaders in the district. He said, what if nurturing joy was our ultimate purpose in education? What would that look like? So Becca, what would that look like if that was the ultimate goal of education, nurturing joy?
I think what it does is it shifts the mindset, right? It's kind of like, I think when we're trying to solve problems that are hard, it's like looking through a kaleidoscope, and it's okay to see things differently. And instead of what we have to do, it's what the opportunity presents for us to do. And I think that is where that joy and creativity and the flexibility within the guardrails of the classroom comes alive. And I think that's the difference between a good teacher and a great teacher. Is it's that opportunity to enter those moments.
We just had a couple teachers on, and when we posed the opening question to them, it was basically them knowing their why. And that's what drove that, is the teachers knowing their why in the classroom. And so hearing you reflect that is just that resonates.
It's affirming.
It's affirming.
We've already
Yes.
heard. Yes. Right. So what would nurturing joy look like then if that was the sole purpose in education?
I think it's really important to communicate with kids, talk about your feelings, understand. I mean, there are a lot of things at home that we don't know about are happening.
Absolutely.
And so when we use communication to talk to them and also nurture how they learn, it shows, one, they're actually paying attention to how I learn. Two, they're actually communicating with me and not at me. And that builds kids up. And I try to practice that at home. And I just see a huge shift in my kids when communication is open like that.
And when students feel that they've been heard and that they have a voice, get more buy-in. And the joy just kind of is a fruit of that, right? It just happens as that. Robin, what if nurturing joy was our ultimate purpose in education? What do you think this would look like?
Well, it's interesting because I was looking at it from an education, like an educator standpoint, and then you just took me to the parent standpoint, and just pulling on those like emotional heartstrings of like you need your child to be seen, right? And how that as a parent has been the times that I've been the happiest with my children in school, and then the most heartbroken with my children in school is about not like they got an A on this test or they missed something, but it was like, how have they been received in that environment, right? And is it a place where they're growing, and is it building? And so that's what I feel like is like, if we think about it, since if I'm putting on the lens of like from a parent, it's like fertilizing our children, right? Yeah. We're trying to help develop them into like respectful and loving human beings because the school and the teachers and everyone around sees and cares about like all of our children.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Becca, your role allows you to see multiple lenses of education. You have the community lens, you have the family lens, you do see students. So can you share an example of a time when you witnessed joy in education making a real difference in a student's life or in the broader community? Can you give us one of those examples?
I have to say this is one of the harder questions because I've had so many, so whittling it down. But I would say, as the parent of two children in the district, and two very different children, although the one that's tougher at home is the one that the teachers are always telling me.
And you're always like, wait, what?
I'm like, did you get the wrong number? But I would have to say that, y'all mentioned middle school and how scary that was when you think of that launch. And as I tell my children, those are the 3 least attractive years of your life because they're just so difficult. But my youngest child's in 8th grade right now. And when he was in 6th grade, and he's a child of absolutes. He either likes something or he doesn't. And he did not think he liked ELA. And the teacher he had in 6th grade, Miss Nocella, set his world on fire and showed him that he can love something that he doesn't think he loves. And I just am so grateful for that. And because that's what education really is. It's the art of our individual possibility and figuring out that we're all players in that community.
I love that you said possibility because that's really, these are little humans and they're not fully formed yet, right? And so like showing and exposing them the possibilities of what they could be, I think is really powerful in terms of putting joy at the heart of education.
I think about our role too as models for our students and for anyone we come into contact with, right? Like when we show frustration and how we work through that or disappointment, right? So it's not always joy, but it's how you handle those that can turn into joy. And I think that's what's really important is to like not ever lose that lens that you are also modeling for everyone that you interact with, how to turn it to joy. Because at the end of the day, that is a choice, right? We talk about finding joy and choosing joy. You don't wait for it to come to you. You find opportunities to create it, and it kind of takes you into that empowerment role where you can create that for yourself and for those around you.
Well, and I think when you extrapolate those lessons, you move off of regret and shame into growth. And that's kind of like, if we can't think of education as ever ending, and that's true for us.
Sure. Yep. So Reza, when have you seen one of your children, any of them, experience true joy in learning, and what made that moment special?
I think it comes down to experiences in the classroom. More times than not, it's usually just the thoughtful interaction. So what I noticed with Crew, he's in 4th grade, he really responds a lot to humor and just being goofy. And he'll come home and he just has all these stories. And that has fostered a love for math because he loves the humor of his math teacher. And he said, Mom, can we see if we can switch him to my first teacher of the day? I'm like, I don't think we can do that, but I love your enthusiasm. So I really think it's the cues and the kids. Maya is very artistic driven. So, and she can get lost in it. But she's very, very creative. And to me, it's just humor, creativity, free form flow for each of them is really important.
It goes back to that communication though that you talked about, because I won't be able to infuse that if I don't know your child. So it's communicating, it's building relationships. We hear about building relationships all the time, but like on a more practical level, what does that look like? It looks like talking to them. It looks like listening and finding out what drives them, what interests them. And we talked about that on a segment in Aha Moments, just about finding what drives those kids. What are they interested in? and putting every ounce of that into your planning, into your lessons, into your moments and your experience.
And understanding that there's not one way that you're going to show your learning or to show your participation, and knowing your students and what they can bring to the table, and recognize that they bring those differences and they have those different strengths, I think is really important.
So I'm going to ask you guys to kind of go back now into your own educational journeys. I want you to picture yourself as a student. I want you to think of a moment when you felt that joy was successfully nurtured. And what did that teacher do that caused you to feel joy in that moment? Robin, I'm going to have you go first, and then we'll go to our guests. So think of yourself as a student. Do you have a moment you can recall where that was pure joy in that classroom that you were in?
Wow.
It could be elementary, middle, high. It could even be college. Just think of a time where there was pure joy in that classroom. And what did that teacher do to foster that joy?
So I love science, and I'm kind of a bit of a science nerd. So it's hard for me to pinpoint one experience, but my 7th grade science teacher, we like did science, and people would come in and he would feed snakes to feed the mice to the snake during lunch, and we dissected things. Like I like have distinct memories of like some immature boys like shooting the frog eyeballs across the room, and like even though I'm sure they got in trouble, but it didn't take away from the experience of what we were doing. He didn't let that like stop it.
Sure.
I don't know. It was, but that class specifically, because we got to actually like get in there and do. It was like there was so much just sit and get in my elementary school. I went to a parochial school, so it was through grade, but it was my 7th grade, Mr. McGowan, and just like us doing all of
active engagement.
And actually, he was the art teacher also, and I loved the way I had joy in art. I'm a wannabe artist. I have no talent. I have no skill, but he made it mathematical, so I can draw a profile, and I can do because it's all fractions. And I think so. But he hooked me with science and being able to do it, and then that opened the door for me to actually like get sort of like interested in like another field.
Absolutely. So, and those techniques are timeless. Like we have teachers that still do that. Like that is what we do. You get your hands in there, you do the work, you let the kids, when it's teacher directed, and I always say whoever's doing all the talking is doing all the learning. So when we have those teachers that lecture, the person who's exhausted at the end of the day is the teacher, not the student. It's like you're doing it wrong. Whoever is exhausted should be the one that was doing all that learning.
Yes.
Right? Becca, what about you? Take us back. Tell us about a time that joy was fostered successfully in one of your classrooms.
In my head, it was like this pageant, and I'm like, who am I going to go with? Who am I going to go with, right? Like and I guess I have to go back to, because I have a child who's about to enter high school, and then my older son will be a senior next year. I'm really in that high school mindset, and high school is really where I figured out I was enough. But my educators figured out first. So I'm going to give it up to my former assistant principal who went on to come work at the district and retired a few years ago, Dave Barnes, because before I was willing to believe in myself, he believed in me. And it just changes you. The good and the bad changes you. It stays with you. And it's to the point where we've stayed in touch over the years. And when my first child enrolled at Safety Harbor Elementary, I called him and I said, well, sir, you may want to reallocate some resources because I've got DNA enrolled in the district. But he saw, and in that place and space, what I could be. And so every day when I show up and I advocate for the good of all the children and families in Pinellas County, it's no accident, and it's because of people like my principal, Dave Barnes.
That's beautiful. Rizal, what about you? Take us to your classroom.
Goodness. So I think I always love this saying that you don't remember what people really say, you just remember how they made you feel. And so I go back to high school, my 9th grade language arts teacher. Like, I do not like language arts. Like, math is my thing.
Right.
And so I think what it was is she just had this open warm feeling to her. Her classroom was just, it really grounded me, because my house growing up was just chaotic, dysfunctional, and I felt like it was that one place where I could go to and have that just peace and quiet. And another part about when she would share about lessons, she would infuse her personal life, appropriately.
Yeah.
And it was almost like, wow, she's an adult and she's telling us about like her vacation.
Yeah.
They can do that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
So it gave me more respect for her.
Sure.
And in essence, it was like with that openness, it fostered this openness for other people to share, and it was a safe place to be able to open up. So I'm huge on communication. And I'm trying to get better every single day.
Yeah. And
truly, my kids come home and they teach me when I feel their body language, and it's like, what's going on? It's not just about, somebody shoved you. There's something bigger going on there. So communication,
absolutely. So for me, it was the arts. When I was at Largo Middle School, my choir teacher, Miss Hart, she incorporated a lot of movement when we warmed up. We didn't just warm up our voices, we warmed up our body. And that set a love for music for me. And then I went to Largo High School and became a Largo High School magical singer. And so I was part of that, and we toured and we sang. And so it was full child, right? Not just language arts, not just math, not just science, but I had an avenue where I could also be myself, because I was a very, very shy student. I was very compliant. I did all my work. But this was an opportunity for me to showcase some talents that maybe didn't always come across because I was so quiet. So for me, it's the arts. And I think the arts are so important. You talk a lot about Maya loving art and loving to draw, and just knowing children beyond the content of ELA, math, and science, I think is super important. All right, so we're out to our last question. This is our joy story question. Talk about a pageant in your head, okay? This is it again, Becca. I want you to think about a story that you could share. We call these our joy stories. So something that when you recount the story, it brings joy to you. It grounds you back into your why. Now, they're usually centered around a student, a teacher, an administrator, or a colleague in education. But for you guys, I'll let you go anywhere you want with this. So a joy story. Do we have a volunteer to go first? If not, I will appoint one. Okay, Robin, joy story.
A joy story. I think I would go with, as a teacher, a joy story. I had this group of students that I taught for 3 years in high school. So that's very unusual.
Right.
So I had them, and they were phenomenal students. I mean, just the chef's kiss. But I mean, I had them in honors chemistry, and then I had them in IB bio, and then I had them again in IB bio. And it was like, I will just never forget going to their IB review session at like a Panera Bread. We're just there. It's on the weekend, and we're reviewing. And I don't know why that sticks with me so much, because I think it was like the amount of time we had invested, and then it's like, I still like keep in touch, via like Facebook and some, I mean, this is, they're doctors and all this stuff now, but it's just, it's just one of those things that it just touched my heart to know these children so well, and then to just like see them. They were putting in the work, and it's like, I think I had like a glimpse of just who they could be. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? At that moment. And like, I had them when they were little sophomores, and they were going off to do like amazing things, and it's like you could feel that transition happening, and it was just like, it was just filling.
That is a joy story. I love it. Becca, give us your joy stories.
All right. I am going to stay on theme because I love a theme, and y'all have shared a lot about the arts or the intersection of the arts. I am the outlier from our other friends. I actually have my degrees in theater, and I kind of was trying to figure out, who I wanted to be and what I wanted to become. And the stage came such a safe place for me. Especially, Miss Cockrell, who was my longtime theater teacher, and I would drive her nuts, and she would scream, "Roberta," and call me the which became a badge of honor. But it was that environment created so many unexpected pathways, and I was in many ways probably like a student that a lot of folks saw. Like I had a lot of undiagnosed learning differences, but was highly gifted, right? So I have pretty severe dyscalculia. So math was never easy for me, which is one of the reasons why I focus on my kids' conduct and not their grades, because that can always be good and not everybody's great at everything.
Sure.
But just having a place where you just felt alive, Miss Cockrell, who I am proud to still be in touch with, again, it was just feeling at home in your own skin on a campus.
Yes.
Once
There's
you find
nothing
that,
like that. Yeah, you're golden.
it just reminds you, it's like an unlimited gas in the tank.
I mean, theater's a special place. I was a thespian.
Oh,
Talent lives.
Listen,
But it
I
was
feel
a
that.
home, and they were beautiful, lovely people.
I loved it. And, I learned everything I need to. People were like, oh, you must have a law degree. And I'm like, no, dog, I learned everything. Because I learned how to do business, how to negotiate contracts.
Sure.
Like those hands-on opportunities change us.
absolutely. Right, so Joy's story.
Okay, so this one goes back to nursing school. I remember sitting in the orientation like, oh, I'm going to go into nursing. This is going to be great. And then they pile on the information and I'm sitting there like, I don't know if I can do this. And then they mentioned something about a mentorship pathway. So I reached out and then Cindy was my mentor. And anytime I wanted to quit nursing, I said, well, I can't, I don't have childcare. Well, let me get with my lady in childcare and we'll get you this, and figure this out. Oh, Cindy, I can't figure this out. My car broke down. She would get me like, just get 3 different estimates. We'll pick one and the pathway will pay for it.
Oh my God.
And it was just, it really changed my life because there were so many times I almost gave up.
Yeah,
And I wouldn't be the person I am today.
Absolutely.
And striving through all that hardship, not only going through that, but having my children see that.
that's what I was going to say. It's modeling it. We talked about that. It's having everyone else watch you persevere. There is power when we have eyes on us doing the thing.
So my mentor was like, hey, can you do like this, your story in front of like the mayor? And they're like, yes. So that's like when I got your text, I'm like,
I think your answer was, I know that because I want to say no, I have to say yes.
So that's where the growth happens when you want to shy away and say no. It teaches my kids and I say, you see, I didn't die.
Yeah. See, I made it.
I made it.
Yep. So I have a recent Joy story for those that don't know. I just transitioned to a new school. I've been at Eisenhower Elementary for 17 years. So I got a call to ask to serve as assistant principal at Belcher Elementary for the rest of the school year. And I, of course, said, yes, this is a great opportunity. What I wasn't anticipating was that first day walking the halls and not being able to name a single student. And that was a gut punch for me because I was at a school that I could name almost all 700 students, first and last name. So I walked the halls and it was an empty feeling of just saying, hi, good morning, and waving and not knowing. And I'll never forget, one little girl got out of her car and I recognized her immediately. It was a sibling to one of the students I had in my classroom the very last year at Eisenhower. And she opens the door and goes, Mommy! Because she used to call me Mommy, and just ran over to me and I hugged her and I was like, that's it. I won. I've got one. And that's all I needed. So then I went to the cafeteria that day and I spent 4 hours in the cafeteria meeting every single class that came in. And the next day I knew 10 names and the next day I knew 20. So my joy story was that just when I thought that I wasn't going to have that joy found me, but I was open to that opportunity. So I am just so blessed to have had you guys here today. Your stories have brought us to tears. We have laughed, we've cried. I'm just so very thankful that my circle includes strong, powerful women like you. And I'm grateful that our circles have intersected. And I'm so grateful that our audience gets to know our guests today. So thank you all for being here and for sharing your stories and for sharing your joy for everyone in Pinellas County Schools to hear. Thank you for tuning in to Finding Joy in Education and our very special episode on nurturing joy.